Very good afternoon, everybody. I hope you all are doing well.
Okay, sweetheart, our thing just started. You paid and Sue? Okay, thank you.
Okay, let me mute everyone so that you have no interference. As you are aware, the session is going to be recorded. So those of you who are not able to sit through till the end, no worries. As long as you're registered, you will get a copy of the presentation and also the recording. So today we have with us a presentation that we have prepared, which I think is important when we talk about publication and trying to decide where to publish. So today's session is in continuation of our last few sessions that we have done with regards to writing, with regards to publication, and today, and in fact, our next session is also going to be focused on journal. So I do hope you find the time to register yourself, even if you can't attend today's session or the session that it has been scheduled. Please register so that you get a copy of the presentation. All the presentation files are recorded and will be made available through our Research Edge YouTube channel. So all the recordings are kept permanently in these sites. So what we are going to talk about today is on choosing the right journal and what are the factors to consider. So the two parts in the presentation today. So I will handle the first section of the presentation, and which is basically to talk about finding the journals, finding the right journals, and also selecting the journals. And Miss Ballance will actually look at the tools. What are the tools that you can actually use in order for you to find the correct journal that fits into the article that you are trying to publish. So let's look at this presentation today. So finding the journals in your field. So understanding the publishing landscape of an academic field can be challenging for scholars who do not have established professional networks. It can be challenging also for those who are seeking to publish in different venues than that they're used to, where they have been guided by their colleagues or their advisor or maybe their supervisors when they were doing their graduate studies. It can also be a challenging for those who work cross discipline because they're not very sure what is the best journal in different discipline. So for early career researchers, where you choose to publish your work will impact your career advancement. So it's very critical for you to decide where do you want to publish, because it may also decide on your funding opportunities and also your professional reputation. If you end up publishing in a wrong journal, it may impact you professionally. Getting this wrong can become a huge setback for your career. So if you have written an article, you need to find a right home for it. You're putting all the efforts, and sometimes we don't spend enough time to actually look at the best home for your article. So it is important that you analyze each aspect of journal submission before you decide to work on your publication for the submission to the journal. It is also important to analyze many important factors like the quality, the credibility, the author experience, the overall reputation of the journal, and many more. So before you choosing the right journal for your article, it is not easy process because there are more than 34,000 scholarly journals across the globe. So we need to be realistic about our journal selection. Okay, you can't aim too high or too low, but at the same time, you do not want to let the fear of rejection guide your choice. Okay, so ask your colleagues in your research area where they have submitted their work, so that that itself can give you some help on the direction that you want to publish. So if you look at the screen here, the following question can help you to identify appropriate journals in your field. Okay, what is the audience for my article? Okay, where does that audience go when they want to read something new in the field? Are there professional societies or organization for my field? Okay, or perhaps conferences or annual meetings or other events that is tied to the publication. Where was the material you cited, okay, published? So that is also another guide for you. If you have published and then you look at all the citations, where is publication coming from? If you want to read articles on similar topics, where you normally find them. So these are some of the questions that will come to your mind. So once you have decided to submit your work to a particular journal, you got to make sure your submission meets its basic requirement. So selecting the proper journal is key here by understanding what are the important things that you need to consider. So a major source of delay normally in publishing research work is when you submit to the wrong journal. Many strategies can be implemented to optimize the chances of publishing your manuscript. The journal selection process should begin not just when you're about to publish, but way before even you start writing the process, because you will write based on the requirement of the journal. So selecting the journal before writing the manuscript will certainly help you to tailor the manuscript to the scope and audience of the journal. Knowing the requirement of the journal beforehand, simple thing as space limitation, citation formatting, will really save you a lot of time and ensure that you have written a manuscript that is appropriate for the journal that you have selected, and therefore it will be more likely to be selected for peer review, because your main aim is what you want to avoid: desktop rejection. Okay, you don't want some technical reason to reject your article. So that is why it's very key for you to do this. So there are points to consider when you're selecting a journals. So I've put here 11 points which I'm going to run through with you shortly. So let's look at some of these pointers, because remember, careful consideration of the journal is critical for you to minimize the time spent in rewriting, resubmitting, reformatting the manuscript for to a second or even a third journal. Okay, so let's now look at this 11 pointers. First one: aim, audience, and journal scope. Identify the interest of the journal editor. Just because your manuscript may be similar in scope to the journal, it does not mean that the journal editor is currently interested in your topic. Check when similar articles were published in the journal. If similar articles have been published within the last 2 to 3 years, this may suggest that the journal editor is likely currently interested in your topic. Look at recently published editorials, review articles, and special issues. These are usually about topics the journal editor feels are currently important for the field. If you find that your manuscript is similar in scope to those that have been published by one of your potential journals, this may actually suggest that the journal editor will likely consider your research topic also important. So that is one way of guiding you. Are you findings? Are your findings practically applicable? Are they theoretical? How about your methodology? Are you addressing specific critical questions? So identify also the interest of the readers. So this is also another important thing. The audience. Who is going to be your audience? Who's going to be reading your publication? Your goal is not only to be published, but also to be widely read. Review the most downloaded or most cited list from your potential journal. If you find that your manuscript is similar in scope to articles in this list from one of your potential journal, this may actually suggest that if you publish in this journal, your article may also be widely read as well. So it is key for you to shortlist a few potential journals and carefully read their scope, which is normally found in the instruction to authors, and also to review the types of articles that they normally publish. Number two, editor and editorial board. So this is also key. Sometimes you may think that this is not important. The editor and members of the editorial board should be well known and respected. You should know your field better than anyone else. This is to avoid you publishing in a journal that is not reputable. Okay, so good journal editor board should not be all associated with the same institution. So this is another way of looking how the quality of the editorial board. If the quality of the editorial board, the composition of the editorial board is all coming from one institution, then there's a big question mark again on the quality. So normally this information is widely found in most of the journal website. Journal requirement. Sometimes more practical consideration will dictate journal choices. Okay, a simple thing as article length, number of figures allowed, the references allowed. So a lot of journals have different requirement, and this may also be one of the reason for you to choose a particular journal. So again, read the instruction to authors or guides for authors very carefully. It all depends on what sort of article that you are trying to write here. A very large and complex study may not be suitable for a journal that only allows 5 figures. Okay, so there are some journals who actually set the number of figures and tables allowed, the number of pages allowed, the word count. Especially if you look at science-based papers, it's very short, 4 pages, 5 pages. If you take the social science type of journals, it can go 20 pages, 25 pages. So, and that kind of how many references are you allowed? In some journals, they even spell that you're not allowed to use more than 30 references or 40 references. So you got to be careful where you are publishing based on the journal requirement. The fourth one, peer reviewed. The highest quality journal, as we all are aware, quality journal are always peer reviewed or refereed. So if a journal is not being peer reviewed or not being refereed, then that's again a big you start questioning the quality of the journal. So manuscripts submitted to this type of journal must be evaluated, okay, by a team. They have the editor, the editorial panel, the panel of expert. There'll be technical expert on certain themes. So you have a process. You've got a desktop rejection process, and then it goes through the double blinded review. Some got triple blinded review. So they have their own processes that it's set. So a journal's editorial policy or instruction to the authors will actually tell you all this information. So you got to be very clear when you're publishing in a particular journal. What is your policy? What is your peer review policy is about? So this will ensure that you do not publish something that is not suitable for the journal, or the article that is not formatted according to the requirement of the review and the styles of publishing. Language. So this is as important. So although language, as we see, most of us tend to publish in English. Most of that's a dominant language of science. But at the same time, that doesn't stop you from publishing in different languages. Sometimes, based on certain discipline, you may want to consider publishing it in another language. This can also be one of the reasons, one of the requirement for you when you decide on which journal that you want to publish. Acceptance rate. A journal's acceptance rate refers to the number of manuscript accepted for publication relative to the number of manuscript submitted within the last year. So the method of calculating acceptance rate varies slightly among journals. Some journals use all manuscript received as a base for computing this rate. Other journals may allow the editor to choose which paper are sent to reviewers and calculate the acceptance rate and those that are reviewed. In some journals, those who get desktop rejection is not computed as part of the number. So locating acceptance rate for individual journals or for specific discipline can sometimes be difficult. While these should not be a deciding factor, it is also an important consideration if your promotion and tenure is dependent on your publication. Because if the acceptance rate is very low, then the probability for you to get publication may be much lower. So locating the acceptance rate for individual journals is sometimes key for you. So journals with lower article acceptance rate are normally considered to be more prestigious. Key to getting your articles published in this top tier journal is ensuring that your manuscript strictly adheres to the journal scope, the guideline, and the submission requirement. So craft a carefully worded cover letter, and when possible, make pre-submission inquiry. So nothing stops you from writing to the editor and to check how long it takes, and some of the requirement that may not be spelled out in the journal. So this is for you to avoid getting your article get rejected, okay, or desktop rejection. And there are also a lot of other tips uh, and resources on finding journal acceptance rate that you can look, right from contacting the editor to even just Google the journal name and look at acceptance rate, and you will see some of it appearing there. You can also check the American Psychological Association APA journal acceptance rate link here. So I provide you this presentation at the end of the session, and you can click on the links to actually get more insight on acceptance rate. Time to publication. Some journals take much longer than others, okay, right from the submission to publication. And you can see this when you open any journal. Most journals will actually give you the article history. If you see the diagram on the right hand side here, this article was received on 20th October 2015 and then revised on 11 October 2016. See, almost 1 year. And then accepted on 16 October and available online in November. So it took almost a year for this article to be published. So you got to evaluate what is the waiting time and how long are you able to wait. So how rapid is its dissemination? Is it important for you or it's not important for you? So all this will actually will determine whether a particular journal is suitable for you. So you can also ask the editor if there is a long queue and what is the expected time of turnaround for this article. Impact factor. What is a journal's impact factor and is it really important? In theory, the impact factor indicates how important the journal is to its field. The important factor is calculated normally every 2 years by Thomson Scientific. The actual value of the impact factor may be controversial, and an impact factor alone should not be the basis of your decision to submit a manuscript to a particular journal. There are also several other measures, page rank, the Eigen factor. There are many other indicators that is also used to rank the influence of a journal on its field. So when combined, these measures will appear to track the influence of each journal and may be helpful when you are deciding to select the journal that is most appropriate for your manuscript. So it is important to note, however, that the decisions about promotion and tenure may be determined by each institution on the acceptable publication and its ranking. So it may not be based on impact factor. So every institution may have the A star journals that you can publish, the first tier journal, second tier, third tier. So they may have, every institution may come up with that uh, tiers of journals that you are allowed to publish. The next one, indexing. To increase the visibility of your article online, be sure that the journal is indexed in the online databases that you target audiences will use to find your articles. Widely indexed articles are more likely to be found by other researchers during their literature review process, and a quality journal will be indexed in one or more major journal indexes. So that will give you more visibility of your article, and that will result in higher citations, which is the key part of why you're publishing. When you have selected the journal you are looking for, you will get a record for that journal that has several select sections in the journal website, and you can see that very easily in most websites, where there will be an option or a tab on abstract and index, and that's where you need to see which are the databases that is capturing this particular journal. Open access. We've talked a lot about open access in many of our sessions in the past. So to increase the accessibility of your article, so you may want to consider open access journal, where people do not need to subscribe to get access to your full article. So this is another way of actually determining whether which journal that you want to publish. There are more and more funding agencies now who require you to only publish in open access journal. Publishing frequency and circulation count. Okay, this is also important, because if you have a journal that is publishing frequently, okay, quarterly or monthly, compared to annually, then the probability of you getting your article published is much higher. The waiting time is much shorter as well. So this circulation count sometimes is important for you to decide whether you are able to wait, because if a journal has higher frequency of making the article accepted because they have many issues, then the probability of you getting your publication out within 6 to 9 months is much higher, compared to uh, one issue a year. And if the journal can take in 10 articles, so means to say they can only take 10 articles per year, which will limit your probability of getting your article published. So in summary, for the from the 11 tips that you should consider before selecting the right journal for your manuscript, we can group them into four main steps. Okay, take home messages, specific publication goal, journal scope, and also ranks the options. So if you look at the four step here, state the first one, state your messages. Okay, what is your take home message? Your take home message is basically your key message that you want your readers to remember about your research. It is the focus of your paper's argument and claims. So your take home message will help you determine who your ideal audience will be, and thus which journal is best to reach this audience. So you need to understand that first before you before you decide to select a particular journal. Whether you are about to start writing your paper, okay, or you have already written it, you might want to write out your take home messages and keep it visible as you work through the steps of finding the right journal. Step number 2 here, which decide your specific publication goal. Which audience do you want to reach? So this is comes back to your publication goal. Check your take home message and write down who would really benefit from knowing your research, because you need to understand who is going to be the audience. So if you want high citation, you need to get the right audience. Which are the audience? So what kind of article are you writing? So would you need an international audience, or is your article very regional and it's going to be well read by the regional audience, or the national at the national level? So it's important. Is it going to be an open or closed access publication? Is it do you want a quick turnaround in your publication? So all this will actually determine uh, the actual goal why you are trying to publish. The third one, does the paper meet the journal's requirement? Okay, so this is again, I keep highlighting this. You have to read clearly what is the requirement of the journal. So if you do not meet the journal's requirement, you can have the best article in the world and you will still get a desktop rejection. So be clear on the aims and scope. Um, what is the type of article they publish? Do they only focus on qualitative type? Do they focus on quantitative type? What is the word count, the citation, the figures and tables, the ethical requirement in terms of, do they need an ethics committee approval before it can get in? How do you manage the authorship? So all this may actually determine whether your article is actually going to be accepted in that particular journal or not. So you have to decide on that. And then the fourth one here, decide which journal best meets your requirement. Okay, so it's not just what the journal want, but does it really meet your publication need? It's your time now to weigh up your answers to the question, to rank your shortlisted journal and whether it meets your own publication needs. If you have time, quickly you can scan the last few issue of each of the journal to see whether papers similar to yours have been published recently, which might mean yours would not be considered novel enough for that journal. However, if you look at in the opposite vein, your findings might connect well with a recently published paper, and you could include discussion of this in your paper. So this is linking it back to the existing publication. So if you happen to get rejected by your first choice of journal, you will still have your short list ready for a quick submission to the next journal. But at the same time, as you do all this, do not forget these predatory publishers. While the internet has allowed more transparent access to research, it has also resulted in what you call a cottage industry of fake journals who exist for the purpose of generating revenue rather than furthering scholarship. So keep this in mind to avoid being fooled. So how do you know whether a particular journal is fake? So there are a few things that you see that I put here. The first one, reputable journals and conferences do not make cold calls. Many of us have experienced this before, where you have journals writing to you, conferences organizers writing to you to say, hey, we can allow you to publish if you can send this paper. So they force you to submit. So so that is a signal that there's something not right, why they are hard selling a particular journal. Consider the entity suspect if questions about peer review, selection criteria, these are all very vague. Especially when you go to the website, you can't find details about how this whole process is managed. So that is another signal that this journal is questionable. Fact check any claims made by the publisher or the conference organizer. If they list someone as a member of the editorial board, confirm that with the person in question. You can do a check on the, it's so easy now with Google to actually search on any editorial members, and based on their background you are able to judge whether this particular journal is reputable or not. Make sure your own professional online presence is accurate and up to date, because having correct information about yourself, about your institution, about your personal website is as important, because when people do a search on you, it is also going to come out. So you have to be professional on yourself as well. Talk to your colleagues about how to avoid being duped by these predatory publishers. These publishers typically trick unsuspecting academics. Sometimes even respected senior scholars get tricked into recruiting colleagues for this suspect editorial board. So you got to be very careful. But of course, the easiest one is work closely with your librarian. So this is key. Not many of us really spend time talking to our librarian. Okay, so our librarian can actually really do the screening job for you. So work closely with them. I've also put on the screen here the Jeffrey Bell's list to spot scammers. So you can look at this. So this list is not really up to date lately, but it is still as good. When you look at the list, you will be able to get thousands of journals that is put on the list that you should actually avoid. So lastly, before I hand over to Miss Ballance, what are the red flags to spot on predatory publishers? So this is a simple one that you see here, which is quite easy for you to spot if there is no standard identifiers like the ISN or DOI. So that is one signal. The scope of the journal seems to be so wide, like everything under the sun can be published in the journal. That is also another red flag for you. No transparency about article processing charges, or in short, you call it APC. So meaning to say they don't talk about it, but eventually you'll get a fat bill at the end of the day for publishing in the particular journal. Poor online presence. You don't get anything much. You try to search, you can't get information, you can't get the past issues, you're not able to track the journal. So that basically signals that's a problem with this particular journal. The journal is not well indexed. Okay, you can look at all the common indexes, your Scopus, your ISI, and Emerald. So and all this many EBSCO hosts, all these databases. If your this particular journal don't seem to be appearing anywhere, then that's also another red flag for you. And finally, the officials of the journal who is communicating with you seem to be using email addresses of a free email supplier like Gmail. Okay, so this is another signal, but of course, uh, you have to take this one with a pinch of salt, because not only because an editor mail you from a Gmail ID, it doesn't mean that it is a bogus journal. Sometimes even good journals hire independent editors or the journal itself, but then it sometimes triggers you as well whether this is a professionally managed journal. Okay, so these are some of the important things that you need to do when you talk about choosing the right journal, and some of the factors that you really need to consider in whichever field you are in, whether you're in social sciences, you're in the natural sciences, or in the business or humanities and arts, is the same thing that you have to always take into consideration. So now I shall hand over to Miss Ballance to take you through some of the tools. All these tools will be made available. So all the hyperlinks will be made available for you. So at the end of the presentation, I will send this presentation to you, so you have got all the hyperlinks for you to check out some of the tools that can help you to identify proper journals for your manuscript. Okay, to you, Miss Balance.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vic. And good afternoon, everyone. As Dr. Vic has suggested, it is often easier to write a paper when you have a journal in mind, rather than the other way around, writing a paper and then looking for a journal. But both ways are quite okay to do it. So the part of today's presentation, I will introduce you to a variety of tools and methods to identify potential journals in which to publish your work. As Dr. Vic mentioned, there are hundreds of thousands of journals. So various ways to find journals to publish in. You can use local sources, databases, online tools, and subject-specific lists. So I'm going to go through each one quickly. Local sources. From your reading, perhaps as you're reading articles in your research, particular journal seems to crop up a lot in your search results. And that might be a clue that this is a journal in your field of study that would be a good one in which to submit your paper. Maybe your supervisor, your mentor, a professor, or another graduate student will suggest that your area of research would be a good paper to submit to a particular journal. And then as you are conducting a literature review for your paper and compiling your reference list, you may come across several articles coming out of a particular journal. And again, that might be an indication that this is a good choice in which to submit your paper. Okay, next slide, please. You can also leverage the abstract and indexing databases to help you find various journals of good quality. Here at the University of the Bahamas, we have EBSCOhost. We subscribe to EBSCOhost databases. In addition, we also have a product from EBSCO called Publication Finder, which you can use in order to drill down in your discipline to find a list of potential journals in which to publish. And I'm going to try to demonstrate this. I'm going to share my screen. Yes. And here we are. So I have gone from the university library website to the A to Z list of databases and chosen Publication Finder. And you can see, I don't know if you can see this, but it lists all the fields or the disciplines which have journals that you can look at. So we can just click on any which one let's say economics. And these are all journals which we have subscribed to. I guess I've got logged out. I'm going to just click again, economics. And there are 1,137 journals. And then you can just see, scroll down and you can and look at and find one which you want to look at, or you can further limit by more subject headings, let's say here. And then once you find a journal, well, these are all books, unfortunately. Let me just go back to economics and just choose a journal. You click on the title and it tells you a little bit about the journal. It has an ISSN, obviously, who publishes it, its frequency, and whether it's peer reviewed, and then gives you a link to the website of the journal. So that's, and it tells you a bit about what kinds of articles that this journal publishes. So this is just one example that I want to go back to Dr. Vic's screen. Stop share. Okay. Dr. Vic, can you put me back on the oh, no. Okay, here we are. All right. Also, we subscribe to JSTOR, and in JSTOR, they have a text analyzer, which is quite a useful tool. In the text analyzer, you type in your, or cut and paste and drop in the abstract or the title of your paper, and JSTOR will go through its database and produce a list of journals or articles from journals. And then from there, you can use that for your literature review, but also you can use it as a guide for possible journals in which your paper might fit. Equally, there's a product which uses PubMed, which is Medline, medical, biomedical, and public health type journals. And then there are databases which are subject-oriented, such as Chemical Abstracts Service. This is a paid service, unfortunately, or Scopus database, which does the same thing, where you put in the title or the abstract for your paper, and it will generate a list of journals that would match the topic of your paper. So because journals are indexed in particular abstracting and indexing databases, that means they are reasonably trustworthy and are of peer review status or reliable journals in which you could publish. Next slide, please. There are also several online tools. Some are free, some are paid resources, which you can use to find journals in a particular fields or use for other uses. The first one, EDNA's Journal Selector, is a paid product. You have to but JANE, Journal Author Name Estimator, also uses the PubMed database. And it, again, it just opens a box, you drop in the abstract or the title of your paper, and it will churn up a list of articles which match. And then from there, you can look through or and select the journal's possible journal titles. Journal Guide works the same way. It's a free tool. It brings a lot of data sources together, and it lets you search by your title, the title or abstract of your paper, to find potential journals in which to publish. Similarly, with the product called SPI Hub, Scholarly Publishing Information Hub, which comes from Vanderbilt University, you again drop the title into their search box, and it will identify titles, 5 titles that will match your requirements. Equally, some journal publishers such as Springer and Elsevier also have a journal finder tool on their website, which allows you to, again, just put in the title or the abstract of your paper, and it will suggest journals that they publish, obviously, which might match your research interests. Next slide, please. There are also subject-specific lists available that you can use. The couple fields, obviously I'm more knowledgeable about nursing, as that's the field I work in. The IANE Directory of Nursing Journals just is a list that gives the name of the journal, the editor, ISSN, etc. It's a curated list, and the same with the NAHRS, which is a subset of the Medical Library Association, has also a list of selected nursing journals. So there are, and they also publish these online and in books. So subject-specific lists can also help. And again, you would just go to the library and ask if the librarian has access to these things. Next slide, please. Dr. Vick spoke about open access journals as an option for a publishing venue, and he described the various types. It's an acceptable alternative way to publish your paper because your paper appears online immediately. It's shared widely and freely. And there are several directories of open access journals. Biomed Central obviously publishes mostly in the biomedical sciences. They have a roster of over 300 journals. The Directory of Open Access Journals, DOAJ, indexes over 15,000 journals that are all open access. That Inago Open Access Journal Finder builds on the DOAJ database and allows you to sort and the results by names of journals. It refines what you can do with the DOAJ. Next slide, please. Equally, Google Scholar maintains lists of top ranked journals, which you can access on the link under metrics. And you can scan through their lists and even drill down by subfield within a discipline. So that's another very useful, helpful tool to use to find journals in which to submit your research. Next slide, please. So if you get an email from a journal editor inviting you to submit your paper, I recommend that you follow this advice. Think, check, submit. The problems these days with predatory or deceptive or questionable journals in the academic publishing landscape has given rise to this initiative called Think, Check, and Submit. And its guidelines are not only useful for these dubious journals, but also the principles can be applied for evaluating all journals. So what you have to think about before you submit your paper, are you submitting to a trusted, well-known journal? Have you heard of it before? Who is the publisher? Is it peer-reviewed? Is the process clear? Where is the journal indexed? Is the journal part of a group? If it's like an online journal, such as the African Journals Online, AJOL, or other groups of journals. So these are some of the things you must think about before and check out before you submit. So it's really a way of ensuring that you do your due diligence, as they say, and make sure your paper gets published in a good journal, is indexed in the appropriate indexes for your field, and that you have a successful experience in academic publishing. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ballance, for showing us some of the important tools. As I've said, I will make this accessible for all of you. I will email this to you, so all the hyperlinks will be there for you to check it out. So now I shall open the floor for any questions. You can put in the chat, or you can just raise your hands and I can unmute you to ask your question. Any questions from anybody, or you want to even share your experience? You are, feel free to do that as well.
I would like to hear if anybody has actually submitted to one of these dubious journals and what their experience was like.
Anybody have any experience in submitting to this dubious journal?
If not, it's something that some journalists have a lot of fun with. They write a paper of gibberish and submit it, and
get it published.
it gets published, and it's just gibberish, and it's meaningless paragraphs strung together with a erudite sounding title, and they're just trying to poke holes in this whole field of deceptive publishing.
Okay. Anyone want to share their experience? Anyone have or who has some issues as far as trying to determine the kind of journals that they want to target in their own field? So every school, in fact, every faculty should have their own list of the top journals that you are aiming to get in your tier 1, your tier 2. So you got to set your own tiers for your own discipline.
I could also recount from my experience as the editor of the university's research journal, where people would submit a paper, and just for fun, I would, and if it was rejected, either from desk rejection or by the peer reviewer, I would keep it on my target, on my radar, I should say. And eventually it would be published in one of these shady journals, it would just dubious journals. And I always, I laughed to myself, because that was the level they, we had standards, and they got rejected, and they still were able to find a venue.
Indeed. Let me see. Okay, there's a question here. I want to target the methodology of international business of the mainstream culture of different countries.
No doubt there are journals on international business practices or processes.
Yeah, you can. I mean, from the tools that we have shown you here, you should be able to easily find the best home for your manuscript that you're working on. If you're working on something on methodology of international business, there are a lot of journals out there, and I'm sure using the tools that we have shown you here, you should be able to find the best journals in this area. If you are also reading articles when you are preparing this particular journal, you can look at the references and see where are these journals coming from, where are these good articles that you have read coming from. So that is one way of guiding you in targeting the journals that you want to also publish, because these are the top journals that you have read and they are good.
And also some journals only publish methodology papers.
Yes.
And that's usually part of the title of the journal. So that will help you narrow it down too. But I believe in the library, we do have some handbooks for various subjects on publishing in the main library, I should say. So I know for sure.
Please do use the library services. I think we don't really fully utilize the library services that we have right from our online publication, online databases. There's a lot of resources in the library, but many of us don't really use it. We rely a lot on our own Google search and try to find, but actually a lot of help can get from the library. So I use the library a lot in trying to get my resources. So please try to use the library, whether you're a student or whether you're a faculty. I think the resources that you have in the library is amazing. You don't realize if you have not used it.
And we have tricks. There is actually a trick in Google Scholar. If you go into the settings and then drill down to library settings, you can actually set the university as one of the targets. So when it returns results for you, it
Yeah.
includes what we have in full text because it links up to that list of journals, which I showed you in
Okay.
the publication finder.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that it doesn't mean we don't have to have EBSCO, but it means that we have another way of exploiting that rich resource that we subscribe to.
Yeah. So for me, from my own experience, I always go back to Miss Ballance. So she has been my resource person whenever I need to write an article or need help on certain article. I always go back to her, and you'll be amazed the kind of how fast she can get access to article that I can never get access to. So you have your ways. I think all the
My
librarians
tricks.
have their way, the tricks to actually get access to some article that you can never get access to.
And they're legitimate tricks. I'm not using these the dark web, the Sci-Hub, whatever it's called.
Yeah. Yes.
No, I
Yes.
get legitimate copies.
Okay, so the time is 2:52. We are 7 minutes past our time. So if there is no question, please be informed of our next session, which is also going to be very much focused on journal. So I hope you sign up. We have two more sessions before we end the spring semester. Um, so all the sessions, as I've said to you at the beginning, is recorded. Um, in fact, the last few semesters sessions have all been recorded, and please feel free to use it if you think that some of these recorded session you want to use for your classroom. Please do that as well. We have no problem at all for you to use some of the video recording or even to edit parts that you need for your class on certain sections. Please use it. So we have no issues at all. So all the links that I've provided will be kept permanently. So because we have created a Research Edge YouTube cluster, so that cluster will always be there. As long as you have the links, you will be able to get access to it. We have actually put the sites in the LibGuide and also in the UB website. And also I think emailed
Yeah.
recently the compilation of all the recordings over the last few semester, including the Research Edge sessions.
Yep.
So
Mhm.
feel free to make use of all this information, and also write to us if you have any other concern or you need any other assistance, especially in trying to publish. Please feel free to write to us. Our aim is to push to increase our publication count, which is still pretty low for a university. So we need to get at least 1-to-1 ratio of one publication to one. At least we have not even achieved that point. We are at 1 to 0.3 currently. So our aim is to move to at least 1-to-1 and then eventually to go up to 1-to-2. So that's the aim. So please uh, try to get through all our presentation, and I hope it will actually help you in your scholarly journey. Okay, if there is no other question, once again, thank you to Ms. Ballance for assisting me in the second half of the presentation today. Thank you to every one of you for always coming in for our Friday session. And for those of you who are not able to make it, I know a lot registered today, but I'm hoping for them to get access later. All right then. So with that, I would like to end the session today. Bye for now.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye. Stay
Bye bye.
safe.